Hello everybody and welcome to the 75th edition of the Frank and Stan chat, and we have today a very, very special guest. So I'm really pleased to welcome Philippa Reed, and Philippa and I have known each other for quite some time. So why is that, Philippa?
Mr. Frank Norris is actually my dad. Coming on 35 years we've known each other.
Yeah. You don't need to apologise, Philippa. We understand.
So, how are you this morning, Stan?
Okay. I should have been having my my annual MOT at the doctor's, but it got cancelled because I have been in close contact with somebody with COVID. So I've been on lateral flows all week, but so far everything's clear. So I think I'm actually clear now because it's been 6 days, I think. So, but yeah, it does tend to throw. I know I'm late to the party on this. It's the first time I've done a test. I thought I'd done really well through it, but yeah. So sticking things up your nose and down your throat is a new thing to me.
Well, no, we're unfortunately we're quite used to that in our family. So Philippa, would you like to just introduce yourself? Say who you are, where you work, what you do.
My name's Philippa. I am a year 2 teacher at a primary school in Stockport. I've worked there for probably about 8 years. I'm also Key Stage 1 lead alongside an amazing colleague called Hayley. We job share it because I only work 3 days. So I've got a nearly 3-year-old daughter. And a husband who is also a teacher. So that's kind of our setup.
There's a bit of a teaching sort of empire being developed through the Norris clan. But anyway, it's lovely. Thank you for joining us. And so it makes it sort of rather special for me. So it's a real treat to have you on. So, okay. So the first thing we do is what's caught your eye this week. So we go to Stan. What's caught your eye?
Well, this is a bit left of field, I think they call it, or a curveball, but what's caught my eye this week is the Batman effect. And the Batman effect is to reduce your anxiety and help your well-being. You adopt another persona. You take on another name and have a different view on life, as done by Adele and Beyonce when they were performing in their earlier times. I can't remember that. Was it Sasha Fierce?
Yeah.
Beyonce.
So are you aware of this, Philippa? Has this been?
Oh yeah, Sasha Fierce. Yeah. Oh, she refers. She's got an album. I am ... Sasha Fierce. Sasha Fierce. Yeah. No, it's she's. To be honest, I didn't know about Adele. I didn't know Adele had an alter ego. But
Sasha Carter. Adele. She's
Sasha Carter, so she's a massive Beyonce fan, and I think when she won her Grammy, I think she thanked Beyonce and said, "Really, you deserve this award." So obviously, I'm assuming Sasha is taken from Beyonce, and Beyonce's surname is Carter, so she is really trying to emulate Beyonce.
You know, who? I mean, you come on Frank and Stan chat, and you just never know what you're going to learn. So, Stan, your alter ego is Batman, is it?
No, I'm going to be Zach Sharp.
Oh, right.
Zach Sharp is someone who sleeps all day and wakes up in the early hours of the morning to solve problems. I've just got to convince my wife that that's my alter ego.
Oh dear.
I just wondered though, how many people take it back to schools, how many people when they get promoted in the early days don't necessarily formally choose a different persona, but actually demonstrate a different persona. I know somebody who worked very closely to me who suddenly changed character completely when she became a head teacher. And from somebody who everyone had gone to, she'd been the sort of oracle for everyone to go and talk to bounce ideas off. She suddenly distanced herself from everybody and became a boss, which was really weird, really strange. And it just didn't, I mean, it doesn't work.
I know some kids that have done it. You know, there's kids that I've taught or, you know, in the past, and you think they do portray themselves as someone that when you actually get to know them, they're not. And it tends to be, in my opinion, it tends to be the boys that are, they want to be this kind of like this tough cookie and, you know, sort of very streetwise, and actually they're really, really not.
Yeah.
So I guess in a way that's almost like an alter ego, you know, pretending to their mates and to their peers that they are. There's one boy in particular that I can think of, but yeah, he's actually very, very gentle and quite needy, really. But yeah, what if his alter ego is this, you know, really tough guy?
I think it's interesting. I think when people get promoted, I think that staff staff expectations, isn't it? I think if you're comfortable with yourself and you're clear about why you've got, you know, why you're being promoted and whatever, and you can continue to be yourself, then I think staff look at that and say there's somebody comfortable with themselves and what they're about, and there's a sort of consistency. So it's not as if I've been playing this part, you know, because actually I've got to play my part in this play. It's like the Truman Show, you know, I've got to play my part in this play, but actually now that I've got a different role, actually I've got to move somewhere in the set, and I've actually got to present myself in a slightly different way. And I think staff look at that and think, well, you know, but you're still, it's like the point you make, Stan, you know, I'm a leader and a manager. Well, you know, I've got to be a leader or a manager. Well, it's the same person, you know, at the end of the day, people are seeing through you.
Yeah. There's a book called The Wounded Leader, which actually talks about people, they describe it as a mask, wearing a mask for the job, and saying actually you get wounded more in those circumstances, because when people criticize you, they're criticizing an alter ego that isn't you. Yeah. And therefore you feel not only criticized but unfairly, because you're playing a different role at that point, and it's a very personal attack. So it's I can't remember who wrote it. I got it when I was in America once. It's a very good explanation of why criticism of teachers and of leaders in schools is far more personal than other jobs, and how people, you either recover from it or you don't. It's really quite a good book.
Okay, Pips, what's caught your eye this week?
Well, yeah, I have been, you know, I've been on half term, so I've been doing a bit of reading, and you know, I wanted to bring something educational and profound to this podcast, but unfortunately I can't. All my half term has been, we have been in the midst of, I can only describe it as hell, because we are potty training our very strong-willed, strong-minded, independent, knows what she wants little girl, and yeah, we went into it very naively on Saturday, thinking that, you know, she's 3 in December, she's definitely ready, she's very intelligent, you know, she'll definitely be able to do it. And it's been like a car crash. It's just been horrendous. So yeah, so to be honest, that's kind of what has been consuming my week. Just constant, do you need a wee? Come on, that's all we've basically done. So Luke, my husband, has taken a trampoline in this morning.
Is she wearing a nappy?
Well, this was the thing. He said, I can't take a trampoline in, and her you know, that causes anybody to need to go for never mind you know, a 2-year-old. So he's put pants on her with a nappy on top, as almost like, and she doesn't know that she's got a nappy on.
Oh, right.
Put it on, because yeah, he said I can't cope with that on the trampoline. So yeah, so he's gone with her. Yeah, so it's just been a funny old week, to be honest.
It's interesting how there is absolutely, nothing. There's something that your own children, bring to your understanding of child development. You can do this. And there are many, many highly effective, brilliant teachers out there, leaders who are not married, haven't got their own children or whatever. Have relationships with young people in their families and whatever. So I'm not critical of that. But there is that experience you've had this week is something that, unless you've actually got a child of your own, you don't know what that experience is like, and actually that's something that I think brings to a discussion you may have with your own parents in the school about when they drop into the conversation, we're going through hell trying to potty train our child. It enables you to have a slightly different conversation than one where you haven't experienced that.
Yeah, definitely. You're definitely more. I often think back and cringe really to how I used to, I wouldn't portray this to the parents, but how I would feel when parents would say, she wouldn't get dressed this morning. We're late because she wouldn't get dressed. And I think, just make her, just say to her, go into school, get dressed, put your uniform on. But I know Indy's, she's not even 3 yet, but when she doesn't want to do something, she doesn't want to do it. And there's no amount of bribery, persuading, encouraging that will make her change her mind. So yeah, being a parent, you definitely are more understanding. You have a more gentle approach, I think, and you see the bigger picture rather than, oh, you're late because you won't get changed. You can sort of try and put yourself in that situation and think that must be very stressful, and definitely more understanding. So yeah, those conversations with parents when you are a parent,
are slightly different, aren't they?
Yeah. And as I say that, I know quite a lot of highly skilled, trained staff at our place and at other places that not parents, and that it doesn't take away at all from their teaching or their skill set. But yeah, you're just seeing it from a different.
Just to say, Stan, actually going back to something you've always said about curriculum, experience is a really important element of learning, and actually the experience Philippa has described there in terms of just bringing up her own child, that experience is leaning into so many other areas of her teaching.
And the same, you'll gain the same kind of experiences at things like SATs and GCSEs. When your children are going through them, you understand much better about the stresses in the family. That that's not to say your subject's any different or you teach it any differently, but certainly an empathetic approach to family is probably different when you've been in the middle of it.
Yeah, I think, didn't we, Philippa, in our family, did we have finals at university, A levels and GCSEs all in the same year?
All the same year, yeah.
So yeah. Okay, well, what caught my eye, because if you watched last week, you will know that I was a little under the weather. I'm still not clear of this cold, and I've got weepy eyes and everything. It's not it doesn't hurt or whatever, but it's just irritates. So I woke up this morning at about 4 o'clock. My eyes were all mushed together, so I couldn't get back to sleep. So I went on my phone, and the first tweet that came up was Ofsted's subject podcast on computing. Wow. Stan, you and I don't know, we must have nearly, God, it must be nearly 80 years experience of primary school teaching. I think I have never heard something so disconnected from the experiences or requirements of primary teachers than that podcast. And actually, I will, at the end of this video, I will put the link to that podcast so that you can all make your mind up. The issue that concerns me most is really, if we're serious about wanting to have more young people studying and gaining knowledge and skills and understanding and experiences of digital stuff, then we certainly do need to make it much more accessible. And I think that this podcast makes it so technical that I think most people feel I cannot engage with that. It's beyond my understanding. I don't know how I fit into this, and it takes me back to my first teaching job was at Philippa's school where she went to, a junior school it was in Cheadle-Hulme, and in that staff room were what you and I will know, Stan, as the Raspberry Ripples. These were little booklets about subjects and about aspects of education. They were all lined up. They're called Raspberry Ripples because they were very thin, and they were sort of, I don't know what is it, A5.
Yeah,
and actually, when they all lined up, because they're all red and pink on the spine, they made this sort of like wave along whichever way you put them in. And I remember reading those and thinking how helpful they were. They were written in a very sort of straightforward way. They weren't technically challenging. So they were, and I'm not meaning that they were like a magazine. But they were drawing on sort of people who had actually sort of managed to have a range of experiences about schools that as a young teacher, I'd never, an experienced teacher, I'd never seen. So that's what drove me to think, oh, I wonder what these people do. And that's how actually that was the start, the beginnings of my thoughts about becoming an HMI. How far Ofsted has got from those Raspberry Ripples to where it is now. And people say, but that's, we've got greater awareness, greater knowledge, great. It's nothing to do with that. This is about communication. This is about how do you, and what the purpose of Ofsted is. And actually, I think if the purpose of Ofsted is that subject podcast on computing, that will in effect drive 95% of primary practitioners away from computing, that is not good inspection work. That is just a few people driving home a knowledge-based approach to learning. And it's interesting how in the whole of that podcast, the word skill is not used once. It's as if it's like Brexit. You can't talk about Brexit. So whatever you do, don't use the word skill. And so what they do is they call it knowledge and learning.
Isn't that in conflict with the high skills, high wage society that we're going to have?
Anybody that's close to a digital business will say, there is a digital mindset, and that mindset does require knowledge. Stan, it requires skill. It requires experience. It requires understanding. It requires a sort of behavior and a manner in which you work. Something which I've said before is rich in the primary school, in the primary classroom. You are, in the really good ones, you are setting children up to succeed in a digital business. Okay. You really are. So I will put the link up. I'm not a computing expert, but I do know digital businesses, and I do know what they're crying out for. And what they're crying out for, some of the bits in that computing podcast are what they're crying out for. But it's so much more, and it gives the impression that this is what it's about, and it's about this alone. And I think it's pretty woeful, to be honest.
Isn't this about? Sorry, Philippa. Sorry.
No, I was going to say it is. I've not listened to it, but it is a shame because the gap is going to get wider and wider between teachers' knowledge and understanding of computing and the children's. And I know that from our primary school, from my school, there's a lot of anxiety teaching computing because, even as a year 2 teacher, 6 and 7 year olds, they are so, computer literate, and the gap just gets bigger and bigger and bigger because teachers don't have the confidence, don't feel they have the skill set to successfully teach the computing curriculum. So, if this podcast is putting more doubt and more anxiety into teachers' minds, then it's a bit worrying, really, sort of to think how we're going to sort of get out of this cycle.
Yeah,
we are doing the kids a really disservice. I know I personally feel like I don't give them what they need. There's a huge amount of work that needs to go into. I can only speak on my behalf, but a huge amount of work that needs to go into skilling up teachers, and it is just building their confidence to tackle the computing curriculum. And it seems like Ofsted have not done anything to.
Well, read it yourself. You make your own mind up. I mean,
it's a secondary curriculum approach applied to primary. That's the issue. I was looking on Twitter. Somebody said this week that they had 2 deep dives in their subjects as a primary teacher, and somebody commented saying, "Oh, Ofsted said they wouldn't do the same person the 2 deep dives." I'm surprised as head of department that you had to do that, and it's kind of, well, yeah, I know that's the feeling from Ofsted, that we've got heads of department in primary schools, but we really haven't.
No.
And in very small primary schools where we've got 2 or 3 teachers, you have to suddenly be an absolute subject expert on things that you've never been an expert on. But yet there's no subject test on quality, teaching. When are we sitting down and saying this is what teaching's about? Not this is what the subject's about. Presuming Ofsted haven't done that video yet to show what the best teaching looks like.
No. Well, I think that the issue there is that if the test for me was always, when I was developing this work, is how would a four teacher primary school cope with this?
Yeah.
How would they cope with it? And the issue was, I think all of that work made me think, actually, a standard primary school, one elementary primary school, you basically need 7 good teachers that talk to each other fairly regularly. And actually, they complement each other's skill set. So it would be wrong. It would be probably a wonderful experience for some children if all of them were music specialists. 7 years of brilliant music experience, you could see where that would lead to, but also you could see where some of the gaps might emerge, So I do think that we are overcomplicating the curriculum to an extent whereby the one thing we need to do is spend probably less time on writing the stuff and more time enabling teachers to talk about the stuff.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that was mentioned was a question from a Ofsted inspection. I know this is secondhand, but it sort of illustrates it. Somebody looking at geography and asking how the preschool 0 to 3 curriculum linked to the school's curriculum in geography. You just think, she knows where the potty is. There's the geography. She knows which room it's in, and she knows how to get there.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've been down this road before, and actually next week we've got Julie Price Grimshaw, an ex-HMI, who's written 3. Well, by the time we're broadcasting next week, Julie would have written her 3rd think piece about Ofsted and its future. So be interesting to see, to have that chat with Julie next week to see, where she thinks it is. And actually, Stan, I have started writing, because I haven't been that well, it's delayed things, but I have started writing that paper on what Ofsted could look like going forward. I mean, one of the things we were keen to have you on for, Philippa, and not just about potty training, but was about how you've coped with the pressure of COVID, and how it feels at the moment. Not. I mean, got to be careful here, because you're a current teacher in a school, and I know that school's done an amazing job in managing all of this. But you personally, how are you managing? How are you coping with it?
It's a difficult one, because the cases, as we know, are increasing. So I was having a chat with one of my colleagues yesterday, actually. She's one of the admin staff, and saying, oh gosh, we're going to have to really up the ante again in terms of being really careful. I feel like you do, as the nation, you slip into the new norm, and it's that new norm at the moment isn't fit for the purpose, because we're not doing enough, I don't think.
Right.
So I was saying to her that we do need to really reevaluate the first steps that we're going to put in place, and that's sort of personally, personally deciding to wear the mask more often, or wear an advisor, or whatever it might be. It's it's been such a roller coaster for everyone. But I was a shielding patient, so in the first lockdown got a letter from Boris saying stay in, and at that point it was Luke and Indy as well had to stay in with me. So I shielded throughout the whole pandemic, really, because every lockdown that came, I had to shield. So the amount of time that I had in work last academic year was so small. So then I went back to work after Easter, last Easter, and yeah, the adjustment there was really difficult in the sense that we had, not only was I back to work and the whole anxiety that came from that, but we had a new head teacher as well at that point. So a new head started in after the Easter holiday, and although that's been great, and you know we've welcomed him, and it is going really well. That was another added stress at that time. So yeah, it's been really up and down. My cohort last year, like the class I had last year, was tiny. I think the most I had was 18, and then but with COVID, obviously, you know, some kids were isolating, they were off, and you know, so quite often I'd have 15 in my class, and it was the dreamiest year of my teaching career. They were absolutely incredible. Whereas this year, they're equally as amazing, but there's 30. So, you know, not only am I sort of back into the swing of it, but I feel like I've got twice as many kids. You know, it's the challenges that come with that as well. But yeah, I mean, it's not been easy. It's I think being a shielding patient it's difficult, you know, in the sense that you're trying to make people understand your anxieties and your fears, really, and you know, the majority of people haven't had to deal with those feelings. So I know that at my school, I'm the only member of staff who've had to shield. There was no shielding patients at my sister's school and my husband's school. You know, so when you think about it, you know, it's quite rare, really, to be a shielding teacher. So yeah, just trying to make people understand, you know, why I kind of have signs on my classroom door saying, please only come in here if you really need to, and why, you know, I've got Dettol antibacterial spray all over my classroom. You know, some people find that more difficult to understand. So yeah, it's been difficult for everyone, but it's that added element of shielding. Was at the start of shielding, it was great. We loved it. We just felt like, you know, we had great weather. We were all, you know, me, Luke, and Indy were at home. It was great, but the novelty, you know, it did wear off.
Yeah. Stan?
Have you got your CO2 monitors at your school yet?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
No. See, this is interesting, isn't it? Because heading to COP26 is interesting, isn't it? You know, we haven't got the monitors. So what we do need to do is to ensure, as we enter winter, we're spending more time, have all the windows open, have all the doors open.
Yeah.
And what you have to do is have the heating up in order so that the children and staff don't freeze to death. But actually, we're simply, because we haven't got the monitors, it's going to increase the cost of managing the energy that's required to keep everybody warm.
And
so
the energy is going through the roof anyway. The energy is going through the roof, but the cost of energy.
Literally. Yeah. So I mean, it's crazy, isn't it? It's. I mean, not wishing Philippa's comment on this, but you know, reducing the tax on internal flights. Yeah. with a month to go before COP26, you think. I mean, there is a level of. I don't know what's going on here. I mean,
well, question time was in Stockport last night.
Oh, it was. Yeah, it was in the ballroom at the town hall.
And I don't know if you saw it, but there was one classic where the analysis on the budget by somebody in the Treasury was that everybody will be £500 better off. everybody, and then it got to everybody on average, but still everybody was good to be £500 better off. And it was, I mean, I was watching it while I was on Twitter, and the Twitter feeds were coming just saying, stop digging.
I think one of the things, because you know, I've not hidden my feelings about Brexit on here, but the issue here is around. I don't think people quite understand that I think people do understand the pandemic has hit growth, you know, and actually, if you don't get growth, you have to tax people more, you know, because you've got less money. So Brexit is a 4% reduction in growth year on year. It's not something that you get over. It's something you're with for, you know, for not forever, but for a considerable length of time. And the problem with that is that means there's less money. You know, so that affects schools significantly in the long term. So the announcement that we get back to funding at 2010 levels, you know, I think, well, gosh, what's happened in between? You know, I mean, and what's going to happen going forward, because there's not the money, you know.
Is the 2010s been very carefully selected, because that was after the result of the cuts from 2009. The 2009 levels are much higher than the 2010 levels, which is why we only ever judge against 2010.
And Philippa, the reason why I raise this is that's the reason why you've got 30 in your class. And let's face it, it's not going to go down.
No.
You know,
another thing we should just comment on is the replacement for Sure Start centres, the family hubs, because, you know, whatever you say about introducing family hubs, Sure Start centres were working, were making a difference, were actually success, and were absolutely slashed when Michael Gove took over in education.
Now, I
sort of a watered down version.
Now, I'm going to reveal something now. Okay, I was not responsible for the closure of Sure Start, but I played a role. So what happened was, as an HMI, you when I was there, you would do some subject work, some survey work, and I, because I'd had a role in local authority, the development of local authority inspections, I was asked to get involved in the survey on Sure Start. And what happened in Ofsted, I don't know if it happens now, is that the lead for the survey would come up with a hypothesis. And the hypothesis was that actually Sure Starts, they were very expensive, but actually what had happened is the middle classes had taken them over. So that was the hypothesis that we went into visits, and I visited, I think, 6 or 7 Sure Start centres, looking primarily at that hypothesis to challenge it or not. I can't remember whether I agreed the evidence I provided, because in a way we were like in effect like cattle. You go out, you graze, you get the evidence, and you bring it back to the person who's leading on the survey. So I can't connect it, but it's interesting that the hypothesis was that. But actually, I can't recall many people saying that the middle classes have taken over the Sure Start centres.
No,
You know, but actually, I mean, to be positive, it's never going to replace. It's good to see these family hubs coming in, but actually the number is so small compared to the number that they've stripped out the system. And when you look,
a lovely cynical thing on Twitter yesterday, that somebody had found out that there is a limited company started, I think it's about a couple of years ago, called Family Hubs Limited, run by or owned by some conservative either relation or link or whatever. So the question is, are they going to be run by the local authority, or are they going to be run as
well, again, I go back to Lord Jim O'Neill says, you know, of all the government departments, the Department for Education is the most controlling. And, you know, if they take control of the family hubs in that way, then actually that's just another brick in that wall, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know,
What's the difference between the family hub and the Sure Start? Like, what are the changes?
I've not seen the details of the family hubs yet. Only that we're going to have some.
Yeah, this all goes
For me,
back.
what made the the Sure Start centres was wider impact than just the 0 to 3-year-olds. It was teenage pregnancies and things like that, and putting those services for really up to 16-year-olds in one place that people felt comfortable with. It wasn't like going to the hospital. It wasn't like going to the doctors. It was somewhere that you'd been as a child, somewhere you knew was familiar, and it had the professionals working together.
Also families, parents, carers, they had control as well. There was a lot of response to what the local community needed, rather than it being centrally governed in that way, you know.
Yeah, I know that Mum went, you know, with her job of she was a lone parent advisor when she was working, and getting those single parents back into work. And yeah, she used to spend quite a lot of time at the Sure Start centres, you know, because it was accessible for those parents. You know, it was almost like killing two birds with one stone. They were there anyway, and she'd set up a little, I think it must have been like a little stall.
It was, I think it was.
Like, come over, like, what you've got your qualifications, what are you thinking of doing, and you know, all of that. And as you say, sort of all of those sort of agencies coming together and being in one place. She spoke so highly of these Sure Start centres. She really did.
Yeah. Well, do you know what? That's nearly 38 minutes. And when I spoke to you yesterday, Philippa, you thought, I don't know how we're going to get 30 minutes out of this. But this is how Stan and I spend our Friday mornings. And it's been an absolute pleasure having you on, Pip. So thank you for joining us.
Well, thanks. I don't know if I actually contribute much, but
to be honest, what we've had from you, Pips, is real insight into what it's like to be a clinically vulnerable teacher working through the pandemic. We've had nobody talk about that before, and definitely no one talk about potty training a 2-year-old. So
what you should be fortunate about, Philippa, is that your dad didn't start saying, well, we had these problems when we
I remember it well.
It was an open goal and he missed it.
Well, I do think it's interesting the way Philippa talks about, you know, this determined, you know, confident 2-year-old she's got, because that's exactly the 2-year-old that Philippa was, you know. So but anyway, look at her now. Okay, well, thank you for joining us. We'll be back next week with Julie Price Grimshaw, and I think it'll be all Ofsted next week. So don't forget, I will put the link to that computing subject podcast at the end of this video. So hopefully, all being well, we'll see you next week.
Excellent.
Thank you.